In this video, the erosion of our society, immigration. I assume that many of you who may be first, second, third generation migrants will probably be sitting back in your chairs thinking, oh God, what is he going to say now? Aren't things bad enough as they are? No, this is not directed at you. On the contrary, I am concerned about how everything that is happening is being presented to us and the effect it is having on us as a society. And of course, the topic that I am mainly focused on, housing, and the pressure it is putting on housing, and what is yet to come when many of these thousands and thousands of migrants who are currently languishing in hotels are quietly released into the community and more than likely given precedent over other people who are in dire need of housing. But we'll get to that later. First of all, let's have a think about where many of these migrants are coming from and why, and let's look at the countries they're coming from. So firstly, one that has been in the news a lot, which is Albania. This country had a population of 4 million just a decade ago, and it's now collapsed to 2.5 million. 80% of Albanians want to leave. 51% are actively planning to leave. That's official. The infrastructure in Albania is collapsing because of the loss of so many young men. And although there may be the odd family that highlighted in the newspaper with intent, of course, to making us all angry because their sons had sent money back home and they built a house and what have you. Basically, the country is struggling with the amount of young men that are leaving, but it's not alone. The same applies to Poland, Italy, Greece, Croatia, Latvia, Lithuania, just to name a few. Now, the way it is presented to us by the media and the government about we're trying to stop the boats. We all know that a 50,000 ton naval ship is no match for a dinghy, don't we? And these people are literally ram raiding their way into our country. But why has it exploded over the last few years? Not sure if you are aware of something called the UN Compact on Global Migration, which was drafted in 2016, I believe, and then finalised in 2018 with all 193 UN countries signing up to it, including the UK. The UN Compact on Migration is an agreement on continued and sustained migration. That means this will never stop. Let's look at it from another perspective rather than the one that's being presented to us by the media, designed to make us all angry. What if I were to say to you that rather than these people forcing their way in, that they are actually being encouraged to come here by design, by default, by the actions of the government, because every time they allow more migrants who cross on boats to send selfies of themselves on Westminster Bridge with the London Eye in the background, don't you think that encourages countless more to set off and come here? What if I were to say to you that the reality actually is that our government is, with intent, harvesting the young men of other countries to come here for its own ends, and it does not care about the consequences, because those making the decisions are not the ones who suffer the consequences. It is the people who can't afford housing and literally can't find somewhere because everything is stretched to the limit. Housing, GPs, dentists, the list goes on and on and on. But they are directing our wrath towards these people rather than towards them. Yet another example of making us fall out with each other, to make us be angry with each other rather than direct the blame at this government, previous government or successive governments. They're all the same. None of them intend to do anything about this. What concerns me even more is the degree of frustration, anger, and hostility, even hate, that I'm seeing within our beautiful country. I've never ever known this degree of anger and hate, and that worries me, because I believe that where the hearts and minds of the population is infected with anger and hate, that anger and hate does not dissipate. It actually ends up being directed, or rather misdirected, with tragic consequences. I feel that within ourselves as a society, we need to look at the bigger picture, and we need to stop turning on each other, and we need to focus at the people who are making this happen, and then look at the reasons that this is happening, the wars that we've caused. I put this current spike, and when I say current, I'm talking almost 2 decades now, starting with the war in Iraq and Syria, the Arab Spring, Afghanistan. The people who caused so much damage to these countries have a lot to answer for, but unfortunately, as always, they're not the ones that pay the price. It is your average person. So what I'd like to see is for us to stop allowing this animosity between us to increase, and to look at the people who are perpetrating these actions, and to see that they are all blatantly lying to us, and it is absolutely disgraceful, and we need to do something about it. But if we are going to do something about it, if there is going to be change, that change needs to be structured en masse, not individuals, not with not socially within each other, but we need to direct this politically. Not sure what the best way is. I will give it some thought and share my ideas with you in the future. But for the moment, I'd be delighted to hear your thoughts on my overview here. As I said, it's only my opinion. I could be completely wrong. You could think I'm completely nuts. That's fine. I just feel that this is important. It has to be said, and I don't want this animosity between us to get any worse, because, to be honest, there's not a day go by that I'm not grateful that I had the privilege to be born and raised in this country, and I don't want to see it reach any climate of social unrest. There isn't any problem with with normal migration. That has always been the case, and under normal migration, people move to another country and they gradually integrate into the community. But where you get migration en masse, that is not the case. There was once a documentary which was hosted by Trevor Phillips, who was the head of the Race Relations Board. There's a BBC documentary called The Things We Don't Say About Race. Little heads up, it's on my YouTube channel, and they haven't done anything about it if you want to watch it, simply because it is brilliant and honest, and it gives food for thought. And in this documentary, Trevor Phillips actually acknowledges that as head of the Race Relations Board, he made a big mistake in pushing for diversity rather than integration, and it is definitely worth watching. There is always a period where people who move to another country need to integrate. I know that from my parents, who came in the early 60s, and in their minds they were going to raise a little Cypriot boy in the UK, and how wrong could they be? I think they first began to realise the impossible task that they faced when they started taking me to Cyprus as a boy, and when my great aunt Nellie slipped over, whereas everybody would be screaming and pulling their hair, I was rolling around laughing. Isn't British humour wonderful? That's how it is. And one day they realised that I would call it that not just myself, but all of us were infected with Britishness, which is wonderful. And they never realised how much our culture had affected them until they made the decision to go and live in Cyprus. And they hated it, but they were too stubborn to admit it. So yeah, people do integrate, but we can't really cope with this massive explosion that we've been faced with. Perhaps if the West were to invest more into building the infrastructure of other countries and helping them and building their economies and encouraging people to invest over there, then perhaps these people wouldn't have a need to leave their country. But it seems that over the last 2 or 3 decades, all we've done is look for excuses to bomb these countries flat, and just create a climate where people from all around the world just want to head somewhere else. And as I said, I believe unless something drastic is done, it will only get worse. And it's not about neglecting the needs of these people. It is about the needs of the people who are already here and the effect it is having on all of us. So I do hope that my thoughts don't offend anyone. They're not intended to. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.